This was the challenge of the late Paleolithic. Survival wasn't about brute strength. It was about outsmarting the cold, the hunger, and the prey itself. Lyra, barely past 2 decades, was the clan's keenest observer. She was not the chief hunter. She knew the distance between a simple throwing spear and a mammoth's vulnerable flank was too great. Their best hunter, Morrow, had just returned. His face was caked with frozen mud, and his spear lay splintered. "They move too fast for the throw," Morrow growled, throwing the broken shaft onto the cave floor. "We get close enough to wound, and they run." He continued, "We run, and the distance widens. The spear falls short or hits the hide sideways. We starve." The problem was rooted in physics. A hunter's arm could only generate so much velocity and range. The throwing spear was highly effective against a close-range bison or deer. Yet, it was a child's toy against the armored, fleeing bulk of the herd. The clan had grown weary. Their spirits sagged under the constant crushing pressure of hunger. Lyra watched Morrow. He saw the world in 3 dimensions: target, hunter, distance. Lyra saw the world in 2: force and leverage. She retreated to the cave mouth. She sought the weak sunlight that still offered meager warmth. She carried her usual throwing spear and a piece of carved reindeer antler. The antler wasn't a finished tool. It was a simple hooked piece she had been working on for weeks. One evening, while watching the children play, the spark ignited. A young boy picked up a dried willow switch. He used the switch to flick a smooth river pebble. The pebble shot far past his meager throwing range. Lyra didn't see the boy. She saw the willow switch. She saw the lever. The idea was revolutionary because it was deceptively simple. The hunter's arm was the first lever. What if she could use a second mechanical extension to multiply that velocity? She could extend the effective length of her throwing arm by 2 feet. This extension would provide a massive final push to the projectile. Lyra spent the next days in furious, secretive work. The clan watched, bewildered, as she ignored the usual tasks. She spent her time chipping and scraping the reindeer antler. She was crafting the tool of her vision. She carved a heavy bone hook into the back end of the antler piece. The hook had to be strong and precisely shaped. It needed to catch the butt end of the dart with absolute security. The dart was the new, lighter spear she had designed. If the angle was wrong, the dart would wobble, spin, and fall. If the hook was too shallow, it would slip before the critical moment of acceleration. Her first attempt with the lighter dart was a disaster. When she tried to throw it with the antler extension, the dart tumbled immediately. It landed only 10 paces away. Morrow found her testing the apparatus, what she called the Atlatl, in a hidden gully. He watched the miserable failure with a silent shake of his head. "You make a difficult thing more difficult, Lyra," Morrow said, his voice weary. "We need meat. We don't need dancing sticks." "The dart tumbles. It needs a fin," she argued, ignoring his dismissal. "It leaves the lever too soon." Lyra didn't argue physics. She argued function. She needed to transfer the enormous power of the extended lever cleanly into the dart. She spent the next day stripping thin sections of feather. She sewed these with sinew to the tail of the dart. The feathers were angled slightly. This was a stabilizing influence. This realization of fletching was another genius, incremental leap. On the next attempt, the change was immediate. and astonishing. Lyra braced the antler piece. She hooked the feathered dart and threw. Her entire body torqued, transferring her weight, her muscle, and the mechanical advantage into the weapon. The bone extension snapped forward. The dart launched, and it screamed. The projectile traveled almost twice the distance of a typical throwing spear. It buried itself deep into a frozen, dead tree trunk with a thunderous thwack. Lyra pulled the dart out. The penetration was deeper, and the damage undeniable. It carried the impact of a charging human, delivered from a safe, improbable distance. Morrow, scouting nearby, was drawn by the unusual sound. He found Lyra breathless, the antler piece still in her hand. He walked the distance, measuring it in long strides. He walked back and silently examined the Atlatl. He didn't speak the language of invention. He only spoke the language of survival. The answer was etched in the penetration depth of the dart. "We try it. Tomorrow," Morrow commanded. His skepticism was gone. It was replaced by the flinty desperation of a leader who knows he must gamble everything. The defining moment came 3 days later. The clan tracked a small herd of 5 bison. These were formidable, plate-armored beasts. Morrow led the charge with the traditional spears, driving the herd towards a choke point. The bison bolted. Morrow and the men pursued. They launched their short-range spears. One spear drew blood, but the animal kept running. The herd was now moving laterally, too far for another traditional attempt. They were escaping. Lyra, positioned 100 paces away, knew this was her only chance. She didn't have the brute strength of Morrow. She had the distance. She loaded her final dart onto the Atlatl. She took a breath. She let the icy air sharpen her focus. She channeled her terror and the desperation of her entire clan into the single, swift rotation of her shoulders and arm. The bone extension unleashed its kinetic energy. The dart ripped through the air, faster than any projectile Morrow had ever seen. It flew past the range of the other spears. It slammed into the flank of the lead bison, just behind the shoulder blade. The sound was sharp and deep. The bison staggered. It collapsed onto the frozen earth. In that single perfect throw, the survival equation changed forever. They had not become stronger men or faster runners. They had become smarter throwers. They had solved the problem of distance and power using a hooked piece of antler and the gift of human ingenuity. Every one of us is descended from a Lyra, someone who looked at a problem of strength and answered it with technology. If you want to continue exploring the epic history of humanity, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you do not miss what comes next. Thanks for watching.